Crumbl cookies, 5 out of the 6 cookies are new every week. That's actually the same thing as frozen yogurt because 6 out of the 8 flavors are new every week. You know what hasn't done that yet is ice cream stores. I haven't seen ice cream stores switch all of their flavors except for just like chocolate and vanilla every week. They don't do that. So there's probably an ice cream store like disruptor who could make that switch. Froyo did it first. They just did it to cookies. We ordered the Crumbl cookies just because we're like, let's try these ones. But like after enough time, they're just cookies. But that variety like keeps you, extends your LTV. So I've been thinking about that as a principle in terms of how to extend lifetime value with any kind of consumer-facing services or products. Like how can we just create consistently rotating new flavors? I will try all of the flavors of a brand and then I won't really buy much more after that. Even if I have a favorite, I'll still rather try a new one of another brand than go back to a favorite of that one. I just love novelty. I think a lot of people do. They also know that the more options you give someone, the more total food they'll eat. And so if we think about total food as like a proxy for LTV, like the more things they'll consume, Oreos figured that out. It was like, okay, we'll just fucking put limited flavors every weekend. And so people were like, oh, let's see what carrot cake Oreos taste like.
Do you think that there is a point of limiting returns on it though?
Crumbl doesn't have 100 cookies every week. They have 5 new ones. And you can get them all in one box. So it's one purchase and you get 5 new ones. So it's really one buy, but you get lots of variety with one purchase. Also, all of the ones that we're talking about are snacks and desserts. So people may like consistency with like breakfast. They're like, this is the breakfast I like to eat every day, and they'd use the same flavor. But when it comes to like snacks and desserts, things that are like not every day or like they're not fundamentals, then maybe that's where, like maybe you wear the same underwear brand. You're not like trying to rotate your underwears, but if someone drops a hoodie or drops a belt buckle or like an accessory, it's the impulse disposable income purchases more than like the foundational purchases. It's the limited hoodie drop for consumables.
Does it introduce complexity though?
Yes, that's why people don't want to do it, because it's harder. I think what Crumbl has done is that they have like 10 variables. At the end of the day, it's butter, sugar, flour, vanilla, chocolate, caramel, whatever. I think it would totally work for a brewer. I'll bet you if you had 2 main beers that are like the house brew, like exactly, a Pilsner, an IPA, fucking Hefeweizen, whatever, like the main core, and then everything else rotated every week.
I think it depends on the intention. Just like some people go into a restaurant because they want consistency, like they want to be able to know, even if it's not the best chicken, they just want to know what kind of chicken it is. Versus some people, so we go out to eat, we're like, let's try something new. So it's like you're trying to cater to both crowds.
So you have the limited staples, and then the remainder of the menu rotates. Frozen yogurt, you just put droplets into the vanilla and it becomes cinnamon. We talk about the brewery thing. I think it would totally work for breweries. I'll bet you'd be interesting if the brewery, instead of having like 100 beers, had 6, and every week they were new. Because then you're like, I kind of want to try all of them. And how many guys would have 6 beers to try all? Right. If there were 20, then you might have 3. Because you're like, fuck, I'll just pick the few that I think I'll like. As far as the consumer's concerned, the consumer won't care about the operational complexity, you just care about buying it. So I think it's whatever the consumption cycle is of the person. So if you go to get beers every week, like the rotation cycle, I think should be every week. I think you can also think about the business model from the front end that way, because like Built Bars have murdered it because the way that they're vertically integrated, so they own their own manufacturing plants.
Oh, wow.
They own everything. Every bar is manufactured the same way, and they just change the filling. With just, again, it's Froyo. They thought ahead of time that they wanted, and every week they drop a new flavor. And even on the site, as far as the last time I checked, they have a couple of mainstays, and then the rest of all of the flavors still rotate. Sometimes you'll get the staple and one of the limited editions, and if they only have staples, you don't buy as much. Thinking about how you can add variety, I think this would actually be a pretty interesting YouTube long, which is like how to add variety to a business to drive more sales. And then there's fucking 9 examples of businesses that disrupted by thinking ahead of time with their operational efficiency for how can I deliver on variety, but not endless variety, constrain the variety on the consumption cycle of the consumer. consumables, you consume them. And so like then you go into another buying cycle. You're not getting a variety of a marketing agency, right? The consumable of that would be the creative that's being pumped out. But in terms of like me as a customer buying, you're gonna get the same service. So I think it's more for high velocity, many time a year purchases for things that consume quickly, which lend themselves to impulse purchases, apparel, and obviously food and drinks. So it's like, I would framework this out. I'd be like, all right, first thing is, let me give you an example of why varieties really can drive a lot of sales into a business. Then, are you the type of business that can add it in? In order to do that, you need a short consumption cycle. You need to have the operational efficiency to do. If you have those two things, then it's okay, now how do you execute it? So you execute it by having your core staples that people always come back for. And then you have your variety box, which should be still constrained, because if you have too much variety, you have the jam effect. You have enough that ideally somebody could have all of them. If you think about it from an executive standpoint, right? So somebody's at a big company and they're like, we should do a limited flavor. They do that. And then they're like, we should do more. It's yes and no. It's like, you need to do a limited enough sample that people will be able to buy all of them and still keep their staple, but not so many that it becomes overwhelming. And as soon as you miss out enough of the limited drops, they're not cool anymore. If every week Jenny's dropped 9 new ice creams, I just couldn't keep up. I want to have enough that I can keep up with the variety, but someone should do that to ice cream. Right now, there's no ice cream chain that is modeling the variety that Crumbl and Yogurtland have figured out. People tend to be pretty particular about how they have their pizza. If you had cheese and pepperoni, if you just had 4 very out there flavors, chili cheese dog, pizza, and then like nachos, pizza, and then burrito, pizza, whatever, I'm just thinking of, and like a dessert pizza, fucking pancake pizza. Like people are like, holy shit. But they'd be like, all right, I'll have a cheese and I'll have a small of the, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, fuck, that was good. But like, you think about that when you walk in, it's like staple, 4 varieties. And I think it's right in that 4 to 6, 4 to 8. Froyo, I think, gets away with more because you can get multiple.
Right.
I know that Yogurtland does, I think, 1 a month, one or two new flavor drops per month. And they have chocolate vanilla. And then they have a couple of the greatest hits. Cookies and cream is usually there. There's a couple of the more mainstays. But I think that what they're doing doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a better way they could be doing it. It's just they're better than everyone else.
What do you think of like mystery purchases? About it, you know?
Yeah. To me, I'm not a huge fan.
I've never bought mystery.
I'm not a huge fan because what it means is you have to confer value on the concept of a surprise rather than on what the value of the thing is. So people buy based on the value of a surprise because surprises mean different things to everyone. Some people hate surprises. If they announce 4 times in a row that the surprises were insane, then what you're buying is just something that has a likelihood to be good. Does that drive more demand than just like having a rotating thing that you clearly sell?
Yeah.
I don't know. A surprise hoodie versus this is the design. I think it's what's the utility? Because if you have, like, if it's binary with clothes, either you like it and you'll wear it or you're probably not going to wear it. A cookie, it's hard to really fuck up a cookie.
Yeah.
It's more, you're like, oh, that's novel. It's more the newness of it than like that sugar, butter, and flour tastes bad in this combination. Like you could eat any of the cookies pretty much ever.
Yeah.
The margin of error on the flavors is way lower. If you get some random frozen yogurt flavor, it's still frozen yogurt. It's still cold, it still tastes ice creamy. But if you have a hoodie that just is clearly not your vibe, you just never wear it. What are the elements that make variety work? It's like, it has to match the consumption cycle. It has to be on products that are usually impulse, that match that. It has to have a low margin of error associated with the purchase. If you buy margarita flavored seltzers, you'll still probably drink them. Even if you're like, nah, I don't like these as much. The novelty offsets the fact that it's not your favorite drink.